Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Yeah.
In your perspective, what are the current challenges in conflict resolution and peace building as you see it?
I think the main challenge is that currently, when you look at conflicts and violence across the world, it's more on a hybrid approach, which I think peace building has not kept up to speed with. What that means is that there are hybrid threats at the moment. That means both physical but also virtual or online violence that are happening. And one of the key things that we've been thinking about as build up, for example, in my organization, is trying to figure out, like, within peace building and in conflict resolution or mediation and dialogue, how do we look at both of those worlds? So not only focusing on the physical element to it, how do we also look at the threats that are available on digital platforms, on social media as an example, and then also, figure out ways of looking at that perspective. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Looking ahead, do you see the future is more on the digital, or how do you see this playing out?
I think so, because if you look at the current conflicts, if you look at, for example, Israel, what's happening in Gaza, for example, there's a lot of cyber attacks that are accompanied by, the conflict itself. There's a lot of digital harms, disinformation, for example, and even influence, right, of masses of people that are online in order to kind of control the narrative around a war or a conflict or any type of violence happening. So I think this is becoming a very crucial part of conflict in one way or another, if you think about it. And I feel like this is actually where peace builders need to focus their attention, aside from, of course, the complementary offline activities. One thing I've been also thinking about recently is there's an element of, when you're thinking about ceasefires, as an example, people, the guns pause on the ground, but then you see that a lot moves online. There's also a lot of this happening on digital spaces. So how do we start thinking about accompanying the physical ceasefires? How do we have now also the digital ceasefires, so that people don't move their grievances from offline to online spaces, and their grievances continue at the end of the day? Yeah.
What actors, obviously, in the digital space do you see play a key role, and do you see any risks with that space?
Yeah, so there are several actors. It's all dependent on the situation and the region that you're looking at. Primarily, I've researched a lot in Africa, and when you look at Africa, if you talk about digital harms, primarily looking at, say, hate speech, disinformation, and such type of things, one of the things we realize is that a lot of it is homegrown or local. It focused on local actors, so people who are probably trying to get money out of digital spaces by creating this, this content that could be considered digital harms. But at the end of the day, the objective is to make money, right? So that's primarily what we see in Africa. But increasingly, we've seen a lot of foreign interference and foreign actors basically, looking at how do we control the narrative about a particular international issue. It could be, for example, in Sudan, right? In Sudan, there's a lot of interest from foreign actors. And one thing that we've been realizing of late is how do we then, as peace builders, look at that particular component and figure out, in our peace resolution, in our context, in terms of figuring out mediation strategies, how do you put that content, that perspective into focus, so that you're able to say, all right, we've discussed about what's happening on the ground, but there's this other component of digitally, we see a lot of influence in terms of trying to shape narratives in these regions. In the Sahel, I've been looking at, for example, how, the likes of Russia, Israel, and China, the US increasingly from a civil society perspective are kind of trying to influence societies to basically, think about different issues. And this is a global phenomena that I feel increasingly we should be concerned about and look at. Yeah.
Thank you so much for pointing this out to us. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And good luck with your important work.